another beautiful day, but a very dangerous border. We're going to take care of it. Thank you.
Congress needs to get in a room, pass a strong border bill, and Trump needs to stay out of it.
There is already some competition brewing between the so-called three Johns. That is Senator John Cornyn, Senator John Thune, and Senator John Barrasso.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Today is Leap Day, which, as you know, comes once every 4 years. In politics, the nation is witnessing something that comes around basically never. A sitting president and a former president, both in Texas, at the U.S.-Mexico border to talk about immigration policy, past, present, and future. Now, these two rivals are heading toward a 2024 rematch. So the general election campaign overshadows everything going on today. And typically in politics, there is a compare and contrast. And usually that compare and contrast hurts one side, benefits the other. But both candidates, President Biden in Brownsville, Texas, former President Trump in Eagle Pass, Texas, are inviting the nation to compare and contrast their records over what this has become an immigration debate driving straight toward the 2024 campaign. And that is where we begin. And we shall begin with the words of both of these political combatants. First President Biden, then former President Trump.
Folks, it's real simple. It's time to act. It's long past time to act. I just received a briefing from the Border Patrol at the border, as well as Immigration and Enforcement, asylum officers, and they're all doing incredible work under really tough conditions. Really tough conditions. They told me what you already know, and we already know. They desperately need more resources.
This is a Biden invasion over the past 3 years. I call him Crooked Joe because he's crooked. He's a terrible president, the worst president our country's ever had, probably the most incompetent president we've ever had. But it's allowing thousands and thousands of people to come in.
CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez joins us now from Eagle Pass, Texas, where former President Trump was. Camilo, you live with this issue day in and day out. Chronicle the day, chronicle the compare and contrast, the numbers and the politics, if you'd be so kind.
Major, in case it wasn't clear before, immigration is now front and center in the 2024 election. President Biden and former President Donald Trump both visited the Texas border today to essentially blame each other, Major, for the country's seemingly intractable and vexing immigration challenges and the crises here at the U.S.-Mexico border that have bedeviled Republican and Democratic administrations over the past 3 decades. Congress, as you know, has remained desperately gridlocked on this issue since the 1990s. In Brownsville today, the president said that he reached an agreement with a group of bipartisan senators in Congress, but the Republicans rejected that compromise because of political reasons. He said that that agreement would have allowed Border Patrol agents here to effectively shut down asylum processing during spikes in illegal immigration and alleviate conditions here in Eagle Pass. Former President Donald Trump said that President Biden is directly at fault for the record levels of illegal crossings here over the past 3 years. He also cited recent examples of immigrants living in the country illegally, committing very serious crimes, including the murder of that Georgia nursing student. And so both the former president and the current president are trying to highlight that they are taking the offensive on this issue. Former President Donald Trump, as you know, Major, believes that this is a winning issue for him and that it could help him propel him back into the White House. And polls do indicate, Major, that it is now the #1 concern among American voters.
Camilo, help us out with some of the underlying facts here. The Republican National Committee put out a very lengthy research document to buttress former President Trump's remarks at Eagle Pass today, saying, among other things, there were executive actions that President Trump took that President Biden rescinded, which allowed more migrants to come, stay in the United States longer. And he basically de-emphasized, according to this Republican National Committee research document, deportation and moving people out of the United States simply on the basis of their immigration status. How much of that is accurate?
Well, look, Major, multiple things are true. It is true that President Biden has the authority to reinstate the Trump-era border policies, including the Remain in Mexico program that he reversed early on during his time as president. That is true. The president could do that right now through his executive action. But it is also true, Major, that President Biden does not have the unilateral authority to just suspend asylum law that was passed by Congress and that currently allows anyone who sets foot here on American soil after crossing the Rio Grande or crossing the desert in Arizona and California to request asylum. That is a right that is enshrined under U.S. law and that can only be changed by Congress. And that bipartisan agreement in the Senate, Major, would have done just that. It would allow the president to suspend that legal obligation that the U.S. has to screen people for protection during spikes in illegal migration. And so former President Donald Trump is right that the number of illegal crossings have never been this high, but the Biden administration, unbeknownst to a lot of people, has also carried out a record number of deportations.
Camilo, you not only study the facts and the policies, you also study the issues underlying migration and migration flows. I've been reading this week several stories talking about the U.S. economy. There are 9.5 million job vacancies in America, 6.5 million unemployed Americans. And many of these articles say that the magnetism of the U.S. job market is one of the main incentives to bring people to the American border, crossing it in hopes of landing a job. And it is quite clear statistically that migrants, legal and illegal, have been filling those jobs. How much of that informs or ought to inform this overall debate?
Well, Major, we typically describe migration patterns by looking at so-called pull and push factors. The push factors are the conditions in home countries that push people to come to the U.S. For example, in Venezuela, the economy there has collapsed, and there is an authoritarian regime that is repressive and oppresses many of its citizens. And 7 million people have left that country over the past 3 years. Many of them are coming here to the U.S. border. But you also have the pull factors that attract people. One of them is that the asylum system is massively backlogged and cannot properly and quickly adjudicate who has a valid claim and who does not and who deserves to be deported. That attracts migration because people are able to stay here, Major, for an indefinite period of time. But there's also a major pull factor, and that is the relatively strength of the U.S. economy during the pandemic. We have recovered economically much more higher and to a higher degree than other countries, and that is attracting a lot of workers and people who want to have a better economic future for their families.
Camilo, right before I let you go, one more question. There was developments today, courts deciding something regarding a clash between Texas and its border policies and the federal government. Can you catch us up on that, please?
Major, this is a major ruling. A judge in Austin, Texas, has now blocked the SB 4 immigration law that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed in December. That would have allowed state troopers and other local law enforcement to jail, arrest, and prosecute migrants suspected of crossing into Texas illegally from Mexico. That is already a federal crime, but that law would have criminalized the action at the state level, allowing the state to issue de facto deportation orders to instruct migrants to go back to Mexico. The judge said that that is a federal responsibility, that federal immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility. Right now, that law was set to take effect on Tuesday, but it is now blocked until the appeals process plays out.
Camilo Montoya Galvez in Eagle Pass, Texas, thank you very, very much. CBS News White House reporter Bo Erickson joins us now from Olmito, Texas, which is very near Brownsville. He was there while President Biden received a briefing from Customs and Border Patrol and other related agencies. Bo, your assessment of what the president heard and saw.
Yeah, hi, Major. We're about 10 miles north from that physical border fence between Brownsville, Texas, and Matamoros, Mexico. And that is where the president started off just before he came to deliver this speech. And kind of talking about both of these stops from both President Biden and former President Donald Trump, there was quite the split screen image, I noticed, of how both the White House and the campaign of Mr. Trump are trying to kind of zhuzh up and rev up some of their base with these stops. When President Biden was at the border, he was talking to Border Patrol agents in front of ATVs and kind of four-wheeler type vehicles. When former President Trump was at the border about 300 miles away, he was in front of Humvees and National Guards individuals in fatigues. They are trying to project some type of framing there about how serious of a situation is going on here at the border. And then a very interesting moment that I thought here at the station, this is the Brownsville Patrol Station, about 10 miles north of the border, is that President Biden, he has been under some criticism if he acknowledges the issues at the border here. Well, the briefing today that the president received from top officials at many of the agencies at the Department of Homeland Security, it was in public. It was in front of about 100 people, and we all watched the briefing too. And we watched the president react to what his own federal government was saying was going on. We heard that there are thousands and thousands of pounds of drugs coming over the border. One asylum officer talked about the difficulties that she has and how much she has to work every week, working overtime to try to process the backlog of asylum claims that take years and years. And the president said that hopefully they will try to get the resources through that bipartisan negotiated border security bill that some people may remember just came out about a few weeks ago. However, it did not pass because what the president said today, House Republicans are trying to play politics with this. And today in his speech here at the border station, the president was talking about how we need to put politics aside and try to solve these issues that are happening down here in Texas, Arizona, and California as well.
Bo, presidential events with public briefings like that rarely result in surprises for any president. There was no surprise for President Biden. He was told that they need more resources. He came to the border to emphasize the point that he is asking Congress for more resources. He will do so again, undoubtedly, next Thursday at the State of the Union address. But it is worth pointing out that everyone the president talked to did say you can change things through executive policy, but unless there's more people power and resources, they're still going to struggle. Did I hear that correctly from them?
Yeah, this seems to be a personnel issue at the forefront here. And what that actually means is funding that needs to come from Congress. And so the president really today, he didn't really try to lash out at former President Trump, but tried to invite him in, only mentioned him one time saying, let's pass the bill, because he knows it's the toughest border security bill that many people have seen in decades.
Bo Erickson, thank you so very much. Next, we analyze the role immigration policies and politics will have on the ballot in November across the country. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. Politics often ends up in a blame game, and probably immigration is the issue where that has most played out recently. I want to take you to some CBS News polling about immigration. Our polling shows that 38% of Americans in our surveys approve of President Biden's approach to handling the border. 37% approve of congressional Republicans' approach. With that as a backdrop, Caitlin Huey-Burns and Nydia Cavazos join us now. Caitlin is a CBS News political correspondent. Nydia is a CBS News campaign reporter. Great to have you both with us. We'll talk a little bit about immigration, then we'll talk about Super Tuesday. Nydia, let me start with you. As I understand it, you're a native of Brownsville, Texas. This was an unusual day, a highly unusual day. The combatants, likely combatants, heading toward the nomination of both their parties, both at the Texas border, both talking about immigration, both inviting a compare and contrast, cementing this as a crucial issue for the 2024 campaign.
Yes, Major, it's great to be here with you. As you said, both presidents or former president were at the border. I am from Brownsville, Texas, the area there, and it's really common to see presidents come and make their presidential pitch as candidates or even express their point of views. Throughout the years, it's been numerous presidents that I've been able to see, and President Biden had President Trump had actually been in McAllen previously.
And for the community there, this is an ever-present issue. It is an ever-present reality to their lives. Would you say, based on what you've heard, that in the last 3 or 4 years, it has become more intense, not only in terms of the discussion, but the underlying issues and maybe problems?
It also really depends on who you ask, because it shifts from border to border. Back in 2014, the immigration crisis was in McAllen, Texas, and now McAllen is a pretty safe city. We're talking about homicide levels below 10 per year. And now we're talking about Eagle Pass, which is a really different community. So you ask the people there, and it really changes. McAllen says it's a safe city. Eagle Pass, not so much. It depends who you ask. Certain residents might say, I'm not necessarily affected by it. But if you ask the farmers there, they're going to say we're affected by it. They've been tearing down our fences. Our cattle is also affected, or their business is affected. So it really depends on who you ask.
Caitlin, it strikes me that this day is not so much a prelude to Super Tuesday, but a prelude to Super Thursday, which is the State of the Union, and a moment for President Biden, to whatever success he may or may not enjoy, set the terms of debate.
Yeah, exactly, and kind of acknowledge what he has been doing or trying to do on certain big-ticket items that will also be big-ticket items in the presidential election in November. You saw him earlier in the week talking to law enforcement, for example, addressing the issue of crime. Here, you have him addressing the border, which Nidhi and I know from covering the campaign. We've been in states that are miles and miles and miles away from the border, and yet Republican voters that we are talking to, and independents and some Democrats, name it as their top
Iowa,
concern.
New Hampshire, South Carolina, it doesn't matter where you go.
Very far away.
Yeah.
No border state, really. Texas obviously is voting Super Tuesday, but the other contests have been far away from the border, and yet it's been such an issue. And Democrats are having to grapple with how to address it, and they've kind of taken a page from New York and the special election with Tom Suozzi addressing this issue head on instead of trying to hide from it. So Democrats here with Biden trying to do
basically arguing that bipartisan compromise gives Democrats almost nothing on their side of the ledger for immigration. It's almost entirely written by Republicans. Right. Why won't you take yes for an answer?
Exactly. Significantly, because you and I have covered immigration for a long time on Capitol Hill. This does not include a pathway to citizenship, which has always been a Democratic priority. And that's what Democrats have been pushing, too, is, look, we gave up a lot here. And we've covered Nikki Haley, too, and she's actually pointing the finger at Trump as much as Biden as well.
Nydia, you have been traveling all over the country with Nikki Haley. What are her expectations, or how is she trying to align them or set them up for Super Tuesday?
As far as Super Tuesday, it's a question many of us are asking. Nikki Haley has been asked numerous times, are you staying in the race? Are you planning to drop out? And as far as Super Tuesday, she has said she's staying in the race because she wants to see more states vote. She says that Americans have the right to be able to express their vote, to be able to cast their ballot. And in her words, she said, America doesn't do coronation. So it's a call out to the media, which she has always said, you guys need to stop saying that former President Donald Trump is a presumptive nominee. So she says we need to wait and see. And that's the plan that she has so far. She has not committed beyond any other states, beyond Super Tuesday or Georgia. In fact, she was asked yesterday during a gaggle, and we asked her, are you committing to Georgia, given that she had previously announced a leadership team, to which she was visibly irritated. And she said, we need to let Super Tuesday happen, and we need to let these states vote.
And I saw something that came out from the Haley campaign about Utah. Do they have some prospects that they feel somewhat positive about there?
They do feel positive about Utah, and I'm basing this off of conversations I've had with officials in her super PAC, the super PAC that has been supporting her SFA fund, and they say that Utah is a much friendlier voting bloc than what she was facing in South Carolina or Iowa, for example. Now, if we ask Haley and her campaign what states are they planning on winning, we don't necessarily get an answer.
Caitlin, one state does not a nomination make. So, yes, you can be optimistic about Utah, but the die is pretty well cast for Nikki Haley, is it not?
And Haley has been making the argument over the past several weeks, look, let the states vote. Well, what happens when those states do vote and they vote for Donald Trump?
And you're a 30%er or 40%er tops.
Exactly. And she's been making the case, look, I'm the opposition candidate. If you are opposed to Donald Trump and to Joe Biden, vote for me. This is also a game of delegate math. Right? She has been trying to collect as many delegates as she can. But if you are not able to win a state, how can you present a winning argument? Her whole argument has been about electability in the November election. Her campaign has told us that is, central to their pitch. This is about November, not the primary. You have to get through a primary in order to compete in November.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, Nydia Cavazos, thank you so very much. The race to replace Mitch McConnell's leadership for Senate Republicans, well, that is already underway. Next, who thinks he has what it takes to replace McConnell? You are streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn said today he is running to replace Mitch McConnell as the next Republican leader in the Senate. Cornyn is 72 years old. He previously served as minority whip. Cornyn said the Senate is broken, and he said he intends, if he's elected Republican leader, on having a, quote, major role in fixing it. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us now from Capitol Hill. Nicole, as you well know, the McConnell race of succession will not just have one candidate. John Cornyn's officially in today, but others are looking at it. Others will no doubt vie for it. This is an early sense of things. Do you have any directional indication of where the conference is at least leaning?
Well, I think it's still early at this point. I mean, obviously, we're just a day out from Leader McConnell actually surprising a number of his Republican colleagues when he made that announcement that he would step down as leader, despite, widespread speculation about his political future. But look, for some time now, there have been whispers in the halls here in Congress about the so-called three Johns. One of them you named, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who officially threw his hat into the ring today. But there's also Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming, who is the Senate GOP conference chairman, as well as Senator John Thune, who is the Republican whip, all of whom have served in leadership and who have earned the respected trust of many members within the conference. Certainly with respect to Cornyn and Thune, they're a bit closer to McConnell, whereas Barrasso, is more at times conservative, sometimes aligned with the former president. And interestingly, late today, there were reports that the former president has reached out to the NRSC chair, Steve Daines, about potentially becoming the next Republican leader. That is something that, we've been told from a Daines aide. This conversation with the former president happened some time ago, and that certainly the chairman remains committed to making sure that Republicans win back the majority in the Senate. But that is probably also someone to keep an eye on and potentially not rule out. You also have Rick Scott of Florida, who is somebody who has challenged Leader McConnell in the past. That was a name that was brought up to me earlier today by the chair of the House Freedom Caucus, Bob Good, who actually believes that Leader McConnell should step down from leadership now. So there are a lot of names that are floating out there, but as you know, Major, only time will tell kind of who eventually rises to the top.
Nicole, very quickly, we have an announcement from the House Speaker on the Republican who will deliver the response to the State of the Union address. Who is it?
That's right. It's Alabama Senator Katie Britt, who is really seen as an up-and-comer rising star within the Republican Party, first female senator to be elected from the state of Alabama. She is the mom of school-aged children and really is expected to talk about some of the stresses and strains that many American families feel and that obviously she can relate to as a young mother of school-aged children, Major.
Senator Britt has also been mentioned in some Republican quarters as a potential running mate if former President Trump secures the Republican nomination. Nicole Killian, thank you so very much. That does it for today. We will be back with another edition of America Decides Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.